hopefully moves the needle, because as an optimist, I would like everyone else also to feel positively about the impact of digital and AI. And 3 sessions that we have from now on hopefully will bring you new dimensions, more information, and help you change your mind. So with that said, let's move to the next segment. The second presentation of the day is by Ms. Sahara Sadik, who is the Assistant Director for Research at the Institute of Adult Learning, Singapore University of Social Sciences. She's also the Deputy Director of this research program, the Digital Futures of Work Research Program, and obviously has been someone I've worked very, very closely with. So Sahara is going to make a presentation in which she is going to raise several questions, one of them being around the trade-off between being people-centric, AI innovation, and corporate profit. And she advocates for an informed AI deployment choice within a human-centric framework. So this is the first time we're introducing this new idea of being human-centric in the age of AI. So Mrs. Sadik, please come up, and the floor is all yours.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much. Very happy and very pleased to be here. This is 4 years of hard work. And crucially, 4 years of time I get to spend with company representatives who have been the most generous in giving us insights. And we have also built friendships. Many of you are here today, so I'm really, really pleased to be able to share these findings with you. What we have today is continuing a discussion that we had in the morning around the topic of job scarcity. Yeah? That's the findings of the research program, the core finding of the research program. What I will share with you is basically human-centric. What does human-centric mean? But before that, I just want to declare I am an optimist, but I'm also a realist. And that means I need the hard data. Are we really, really in the right direction? So to just recap what we were discussing this morning, we basically said that the data is showing that we are on a trajectory of job scarcity, and it's not driven by the technologies at all. It's got nothing to do with the technologies. Everyone who's optimistic about the potential of technologies is right, and everyone who's actually pessimistic about the technology is also right, because it depends on the choices we make. And what we are putting forth is that there is a need for a social response. If we truly believe that technologies can bring benefit to everyone, we need to put together that social response. And we need to coordinate that social response in a way in which stakeholders are all aligned. And this is basically what we basically said we wanted to do in terms of recalibrating that down curve, that we have here. I just wanted to also remind us the problems. And as Phil has shown this particular slide, the direction doesn't look good, in Singapore at least. We actually think it's probably, because we've not done the analysis, but it's probably going to look the same in some of the other countries. There's another set of countries that we all know to be human-centric, places like Finland, Germany, and in that regard, of course, Sweden. And in that regard, I have seen the data from Finland, and it's really looking good. Yeah. So what we have in Singapore is basically a job scarcity approach. When you see this data, there are 2 things that I just wanted to point out. One is that it looks like it's a problem, but essentially, it is an opportunity. Why I say that? Actually, basically, we are not using technologies properly to enhance people's work. Yeah, the professional, a lot of human capital has been invested in it. And for the other workers, goodness, how could this happen in that sense in Singapore? And we think in some other countries as well. And in a way, we actually want to bring a discussion forward differently, because I'm very happy we have lots of our Swedish, Finnish, German colleagues joining us today, because they have shown what a societal response can look like. But what I'm presenting to you today is basically the corporate response, that it is possible for every country to look at things differently and organize it differently. And what I'm actually preparing today, sharing with you today, is about the possibilities for that corporate response. Yeah. So, am I making a philosophical argument or an empirical reality? I'd like to share with you that it's not philosophical. What I'm sharing to you is really from the data. Like I said, I'm a realist. We actually saw data that was problematic, but we also had data that was really, really good. And this data was interesting because the companies that we found to be human-centric, it's not necessarily it will emerge from Sweden, from Finland, from Germany, those countries we've known to be inclusive. We saw it in Singapore. We did. We saw it in London. We did. Yeah, it's actually possible. And it's basically about choices that companies make. And we are putting forth that choices seems to make a lot of business sense to them. Again, who do we speak to? We are talking about category, or rather a group of movers and shakers who we actually will consider to be alternative. Yeah? And why I say we consider them to be alternative? Because in the way they actually speak to us, they will tell us their approach is not the dominant approach. If they are in London, if they are in Singapore, we do things differently. We keep on hearing that, right? So in a way, they are the movers and shakers who are actually trying to do things differently in a human-centric manner. And from the data, too, we are putting forth a very ambitious understanding of human-centric here. Very ambitious, because it is actually about unsolved challenges in society, putting human-to-human capabilities at the center, complemented by the power of AI technologies to extend cognition and connect communities, and crucially, managerial culture of trust and empowerment. So these were the 4 elements that came out from the data consistently, and this is, in a way, a very high ambition. But I actually would like to argue that this is fitting because we have invested in human capabilities across the developed and developing economies in the last 20, 30 years in massive ways. This is not impossible, essentially, if we actually put ourselves to task in terms of complex activities. But first, let's basically take a step back and see what is not human-centric, yeah? Because people telling me, but Sahara, a lot of organizations would actually say that we are human-centric, yeah? A lot of people will say, I am human-centric, yeah? This definition sets a very lofty goal, right? What is human-centric? But I actually wanted to also share what I would actually argue from the data is not, but which we see often in a lot of, in a way, conversations, positioning by companies, etc. 1, humans do what AI can't. That is clearly a false reality. When you basically say humans do what AI can't, essentially what you're trying to say is that some humans do something that is then subjected to, or rather some machine designers will design something that was then subjected to other humans. There's no such thing as an AI working independently in that sense. It's designed by humans. And that's, in a way, from our data, showing a false reality. Second, dancing with robots. Very famous. Yeah? Human AI interaction, collaboration. That's the wrong conversation from our data. The conversation is basically how do we actually bring people together, because the challenges that we're confronting is complex. Sustainability issue. When are we going to get that right? Inclusion. We can't even get clean water to every single population on Earth, when technically we could. You know, we do have the abilities and the capacity to do that. Finally, something that we have emerged in recent times, because a lot of understanding of human-centric adoption in firms now talks about consulting employees, about having reskilling programs, empowering. Again, I actually say that's a wrong conversation based on our data, because it actually means you didn't give them a chance to co-design it with you. And I'll actually show you towards the end of my presentation why this is so crucial. Yeah. First, from the data, again, a business case for human centricity. What we basically find is that the current approach around driving efficiency, cost efficiency, that we all basically said, yes, this is how businesses make money, yeah? You know, of course we need to scale fast, efficiently, etc., because that's the way for us to corner markets, right? This category of firms say it differently. They basically say the more you try to be more efficient, you are going to lose creativity and, crucially, agility. And companies need to be agile now because they are so networked, the competition is all over, but the opportunities are also fantastic. And that agility can only come if you have invested in your people and the technologies differently. And the second point here about business case, when we hear this again and again from the human-centric firms, here you actually hear someone basically just simply saying, I have the data, I can make my decisions. But what is underlying that is basically they have been able, instead of looking up to the managers, to look at the customers. That is a very important orientation because it actually means if you please your customers, the business will come, yeah? You will definitely corner bigger markets. And so this is the position of the human-centric firms that we actually talk to. This is a business choice. And this business choice, in their language, is one to win the productivity game, to win markets. It's a game that they are in for a long time because they want to win it. Yeah? I'm going to share 3 case studies. In a way, very inspiring case studies. We have plenty. Okay, anyone who actually wants to learn more and find out more, please feel free to come to me. But I'm just going to share 3 I find highly inspiring case studies because it actually shows the possibilities. The first, a transnational firm that is trying, in a way, to develop new markets. Yeah? So this is the business problem. It actually is in a transition, into looking at where to grow it. And the next, well, if you're a chemicals firm these days, you really need to look at it in a much longer time frame because of the sustainability dimension and the very fact that the competition is evolving, yeah? And they basically are looking at how to use and grow an agri-tech or digital farming. And in that digital farming, they are applying it to smallholder farmers in Asia and Africa to improve their yield. And they are using a strategy of bottom-up experimentation, using a range of talents. Right? We talk so much about software engineers, etc. Did we talk about creative talent this morning? Media, arts, social science graduates. Of course, I've got a special interest in that. A wider range of technicians, customer service. I'm glad Min Lee brought up about the customer service because he's absolutely right. That is a category of work that can really be enhanced. Yeah? And that range of bringing it together is not just about, I want diversity, because you actually want the creativity that underpins when people come together, bringing their diverse disciplines. And this is basically what the companies say. How do they actually use their expertise and knowledge to help those farmers follow the crop plan? It's a very ambitious target because basically they are basically saying, I want to know what works for my customers. That's exactly what it is. And the reality is that nobody really knows right now how to do it, how to organize the smallholder farming. I keep on getting this wrong. Smallholder farmers, yes. Right, they're so diverse. But you could already see that this is one of those connections between the experiences of the farmers and the digital technologies and the people driving it. And the way to do it is basically to give space for people to try out new things. And this is where we actually saw them going down to the ground, figuring it out. Yeah, I actually see the technologists taking a back seat. Yet it is driving it. You know what I mean? So it's basically how this is actually put together. The second company that I would like to share is actually an SME. This is a Singapore SME. And as you know, our SMEs, in that sense, we do have a historical. For those not familiar with Singapore, as SMEs in Singapore, historically, we are growing to build them, because we actually have a very unique corporate structure of quite high of the transnational corporations and supporting SME role that is not as tends to be price competitive, etc. This is an SME that is using AI technologies to make that leap. It was an integrator. It now wants to be the creator. And it's basically saying the way to do it is, I'm not going to scale. I'm going to contextualize. And when you contextualize, you actually need diversity. But more importantly, you're actually tackling a complex problem outside of what you're familiar with in the technological world. Every case will be different. And again, the bottom-up expression. You keep on seeing here, another creative talent, film producer, doing this work. What is he doing there? And the reality is that when you actually want to connect and contextualize some of these AI technologies into proper utilization, you actually need to inspire, build relationships, and that is available across the workforce, not just the tech community. In fact, perhaps other parties might do it better, yeah? Sorry for all the tech people here. But of course, I'm making a stereotype here, okay? And what we basically see is they basically use that as their defining factor, taking it as a business model where they basically are trying to make sure that they don't work from a scalable point of view because they actually think that's not the way to make money, yeah? The main approach that they have taken is to create a system that is good enough where their focus is actually on penetrating markets, making it happen. We actually also saw that the celebration of the talent is because they can make it happen, because they are the closest to the customers. And as I said, if your customer is happy, why you as a boss needs to be upset, right? The third one, and this one really, in a way, it's really the possibilities. Because here I'm not talking about a company. Yeah? We're talking about platform business. We're all very familiar with platform business. We probably, some of us use a platform company to get us here, shall not mention names. But there are platform businesses that aims to scale and standardize. But this is a platform business that does not aim to scale and standardize. It actually aims to scale and contextualize, really, yeah? And in this way, basically, there was a huge opportunity for digitally enabled production processes, allowing for a new manufacturing model. We all know that. Did we organize ourselves for that? Did we organize our society for that? That this particular startup did, and connected different parts of the world using its platform. 45 employees, 100,000 users on platform. What do we make of that 100,000 users? Are they not working on the platform? They are. It's a new relationship. It's possible. And the platform to enable high-quality product innovation. So we're not talking about standardized stuff. They set a very lofty goal. And they basically have done ventilators during COVID-19 and a few other options for education institutions using social robotics. All this created through the platform. Connecting communities, connecting different in a way, developing and developed countries. So this is a totally new possibility in terms of collaboration. And here you actually see they are growing and growing as a platform to build and make it, in a way, possible for new connections and new capabilities to be done. Because, they are not trying to scale or trying to really scale. And they're not trying to scale efficiently, right? They're trying to scale with a purpose. And in this, they are basically saying, hey, it's actually possible for me to even connect business and product innovation together. And this is a new space, for us to basically watch in that sense. But what in this platform has done, it has connected, has enabled collaboration, has enabled earning, yeah? And crucially, learning. I think that learning dimension is really, really crucially important if increasingly we may not be able to get it from the work that we do. We need new opportunities. We need to cross to new opportunities. Platforms like this provides a very important sense of where possibilities can be. If anyone can actually guess which companies I'm actually, if you can guess which companies these are that I've mentioned, I'll definitely treat you to dinner. Yeah? Okay. And I've given Phil, of course Phil knows. Okay, what I like to basically say is that I've got permission to, or rather I can mention 2 companies of it. The first, I'm very happy that he's joined us, Stephen Ang from Nova. That's company number 2. Really inspiring, and if you hear him describe about his team, and crucially the purpose that he's trying to do, moving into looking at dementia patients, using social robotics, how to support them, looking at aspects in terms of even education and training. That contextualization is so crucial for us to bring business purpose along with social goals. The other one I actually would like to, if you guys don't already can tell the platform business that I was mentioning. Anyone want to make a guess? Okay, maybe we don't have that many manufacturers here. Or, the product designers. It's Wiki Factory. Yeah, so Wiki Factory is enabling this new model, and it's done its best to keep it in a way collaborative rather than efficiency-driven. It's trying to deliberately avoid cost efficiency approaches, even in the way it's actually designing how the company may actually go to IPO. Yeah, so this is a deliberate business decision. So if I could basically share human-centric strategies, what we actually found in the data, there are different ways to use technologies. You can do it in a value capture way, and that's really the driver of job scarcity. Or you could do it in a value creation way, and that will be a driver of utilization of that kind of capabilities that's actually in the society. And it's actually a business purpose as well, because you're actually creating pathways to augmentation that includes moving to new markets, creating new capacity for your company. And in that way, you are actually securing or future-proofing your company. Risky? Yes. Returns? Very high. Want to take it? Your choice. Augmentation cannot be achieved if you are prioritizing standardization, detailed division of labor, and tight discipline. We know this from a lot of sociological research, but now this becomes even crucial for us in the digital world, because the technologies can do that. And in a way, when you actually apply it at scale, that kind of, I would say, unintended consequences from some of your decisions may actually cut your capacity without you realizing how fast you lose that capacity. I was given an example of how many companies, or perhaps I would say the government sector, outsource IT, yeah? We said, government shouldn't do IT, so let's outsource it. And now they are finding that they have to bring it back, because you need that. That's basically a capability for you to basically deliver your government services differently. Second, the third point is actually what I really feel is something that is worth taking it forward and thinking, especially if you are designing AI programs in your company and wish to be human-centric. Yes, you could actually enable algorithmic management through digital technologies, but the opposite is actually more radical. Technically, you could actually enable technologies to allow for self-management. Why? Because it's data-driven. Yeah? You actually have the evidence. You don't need a manager to tell you it works. Yes, I'm going to bless it, etc. You actually have the data. And if organizations trust their workforce, that could be, in a way, allowing self-management, peer management, etc., whatever, But what we're basically saying is let that approach will, in a way, strengthen discretion, for sure, which, was one of the problems with professional work in Singapore, if you saw the data earlier. Fourth point, digital channeling versus multiplicity, very crucial. And this goes back to what Phil basically presented on knowing, doing, connecting. Yeah? You don't want to basically create where people are basically just going through digital channeling, that capacity to basically connect to one another and solve problems is lost. And some of the problems are not immediately observable in that sense, and you actually need ground experience. So if you, move everything online too much, that might be a problem. And last point, very, very crucial, that co-designing thing. Are we doing it? And why I say that, chances are even your technician is high skilled, yeah? I don't like to use the word even the technician, but this is Singapore, yeah? And the technician role has evolved tremendously in the last 20 years. They are skilled. Who's going into technical roles? Your diploma holders, yeah? And the ability for them to basically be involved in co-designing, your customer service professionals, like what Min is doing, is really is such a powerful one, because that data can really help them evolve it differently. I was speaking to one general manager of an electronics company who's basically investing digital in, he was telling me, we were doing this, the standard stuff. And then in the conversation, he basically says, actually, my weapon is my sales promoter. And I was quite taken aback, because that's not what he basically said. And then I actually asked him, oh, okay, why? Because he says, they can actually help me grow market share. My next question is, have you used any digital programs with them? He looked at me like, what? And the next question he says, oh, no, I can't replace them with a robot. Because he never considered the opportunity to basically enhance the work of a sales promoter, to use data analytics to understand the customers better. And this is, again, tied to kind of, in a way, corporate prejudice, ways of thinking that, in a way, we actually need to challenge, because it's so mainstream that everyone just accepts it. I have 2 seconds. Okay, a conversation that I actually want to highlight was basically one, in the course of it, like I said, we built good, fantastic relationships. Someone came to us and said, okay, I'm thinking about this. Can you tell me if this is human-centric, right? I have 5 autonomous GPT, and they're all trained with different data sets, blah, blah. One a social media manager and all that. Can I actually get them their digital twins to figure out so that we can just go to the meeting? And we'll save so much time from the meetings, right? Can you imagine the efficiency, what we can actually get from the efficiency gains, right? And the only reason I could answer him that it's not is because in my previous life, I was in communications. I knew as a doing social media, what was really important to us. What was really important to us was actually outcomes. The outcomes would be, if you actually connected me to customers, not to make it as fast as possible, that is not going to deliver that productivity boost for me. Yeah? And I could only say that because I was a corporate communications, and that's why it's so crucial for us to basically involve our employees in co-design this, because the productivity burst may not be visible to you at the top of the organization. And especially as you will hear, technologists asked to advise companies. They wouldn't know any better in that sense. Any advice you give, they can design a much better approach for you. Agenda for action, like I said, very lofty from the data, not from me, but I love it. We're talking about unsolved challenges, human capabilities, AI technologies to extend connection and connect communities, modular culture, and reward. And a few ideas. I can see Himanshu standing already. That's okay. I want to basically say, could this be the productivity boost that we want? Because we have not been making much gains in terms of productivity. And I'd like to end that from cognitive capture to cognitive extension. It's fully possible. We can reverse the job scarcity trend that we observe. Thank you.
My apologies. Well, thank you so much, Sahara. Please take a seat on stage. Ladies and gentlemen, time for the second panel discussion, and I'm going to invite Mr. Daniel James, who is an innovation fellow at the number 10 Downing Street Innovation Council. And I'll then invite the other members of the panel, Mr. Connor Clark-Lynn, Director at Digital Hub Disciplines, Yara International, Singapore. Mr. Christian Francis, director at Search Simple LLC in Japan, and Mr. Ongmun Lit, senior director, production system excellence at Pfizer Global Supply. Remember, you can post your questions on Pigeonhole, so please do so, and then at the end, James will sort of drive the discussion and pick up some questions from what comes through from the panel. So over to you.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you very much, Sahara, for that presentation. I think there were some really insightful findings there from the work. There's a lot to unpack from that presentation. You can see that I've got some technology with me at the moment, and we're already getting a lot of questions in from the audience, but also from everybody that's listening online. One of the things that I want to encourage is everyone in the room, think about some questions that you would like to ask the panel. I've got some allies that are out in the audience that are going to have microphones, basically, that can come around and give you the microphone if you want to ask a question to the panel. We've got an expert panel here today. So we've got people from Yara International, so really big organization there that we can start to kind of actually start to see some of these concepts that Sahara has been talking about being used in practice. We have Woon Lit from Pfizer, so we'll be able to start to think about the pharmaceutical industry and how AI is being used there. And we also have Christian here from an executive search firm. And I think what will really be interesting there is to start to think about how talent and skills is changing and what types of skills organizations are looking for. And Christian works with clients all over the world for this, so it'll be really interesting for us to get into that. So I think the first thing that I would like us to discuss as a panel is really what is artificial intelligence. At the start of the day, we had some examples actually of artificial intelligence being used to play chess and artificial intelligence being used for playing Go. And actually, they were in 1990, some examples there. So actually, AI is quite a broad term, right? It's an umbrella term. So I think the first question, and I'm going to ask Connor this question, is really, how do you think about artificial intelligence? And, have you been using artificial intelligence in your industry for a long time?
Thanks for the question. By the way, the timer is incredibly intimidating. It's gigantic, and it keeps counting down. So I give extra credit to all the speakers who can actually present with that thing. So, yeah, that needs some artificial intelligence. So, yeah, I think it's a great question. I think even as we talk within our sector about artificial intelligence, it's oftentimes misunderstood and misconstrued in very different ways. I think we often forget that artificial intelligence has been discussed since the 1970s as a concept. And it's been researched extensively. It covers a wide range of automation that happens within the workforce. And large language models, Gen AI, is just one application of AI. If you look at the agricultural space itself, we use forms of automation and forms of AI across the sector. It's used in manufacturing for advanced analytics, predictive maintenance, all kinds of different things. We see it in our software development teams where we look at regressive learning and image recognition, image processing, things like that. And now we of course, like all industries, are looking at large language models and generative AI. Interestingly, in terms of applications in the company, we see the biggest impact on generative AI in terms of the improvement of people's day-to-day working environment. I think we forget how much junk work how much waste work we all face in a professional environment. And we see large language models really helping to smooth that process. I think beyond that, we of course look at other kinds of applications, but that's really where we see the impacts today.
Really interesting. And I think building on that, I think a lot of the kind of discussion so far you'd be forgiven for thinking there's all of the bad stuff over on this side, and then there's the good stuff over here, and they're kind of two very different routes that you could go down. And so I think one of the things that I think I'd like us to start to think about is what are the drivers for a business to adopt a human-centric approach? So, you know, businesses, a lot of businesses, and we've seen some very positive examples, but there are also very negative examples of how you can use artificial intelligence to displace large amounts of your workforce. And we have seen examples, for example, in the UK, British Telecoms have laid off a lot of people in their customer service teams, for example, because they've realized actually ChatGPT is actually getting better satisfaction scores from the users, right, their customers, and so they can get rid of all of the humans. So I guess this is really thinking about profitability, right? It's thinking about cost cutting. And so I'd really like to ask Christian to kind of comment on that and kind of talk about what is the business case for a human-centric approach. Yeah.
Thank you. So I'll just begin by saying my own personal image of hell has probably been on automated telephony, you know, endlessly for eternity. The idea of kind of being stuck, you know, being bounced between different operators is pretty horrific. But in terms of the drivers, the imperatives for a business to look at more of a human-centric approach, I think very simply retention, commitment, loyalty. You can think about productivity and put it in metrics like profit, but I think having a cohesive vision for a company, trying to improve, trying to achieve goals, whatever, you know, they may be, I think that is a sustainable business model that requires less alteration and can adapt in a changing business environment. So just very simply, like a team, like a business team or a sports team, you want a group of motivated individuals who can attain a particular kind of outcome or goal that's self-motivated, and I think that pays in terms of, you know, profit and financial performance, but also in terms of achievement.
Yep. Yeah, really interesting. And one of the points that Sahara raised in her presentation, and there's a lot of interest in the room on this, is that there's a myth of human centricity, that human to AI collaboration, you know, is human centric, and actually the findings were showing that isn't the case. But one of the questions really is, you know, can you expand on why that is really? Why is that not human-centric? It seems that a lot of the narrative out there today talks about how humans need to work and collaborate with AI. So I don't know who wants to pick that up. If Sahara, you want to pick that up, or Woonlit. I know Woonlit has some very interesting examples inside Pfizer of how they're using large language models to do this differently and kind of increase human-to-human connectivity. So, Woonlit, would you like to come in?
Thanks. You know, if we talk about, I've been 20 years with the company, so I have seen a lot of things in the company, and I must say that, you know, in the early years, whenever we think about AI, you know, we think about change, and I can tell you that the industry that I belong to is one of the most change-averse industry. We do not like changes. In fact, with the regulators, we're not supposed to change. You know, if everything that we have submitted to the regulatory bodies, that this is how we manufacture, we have to stick to it. We're not supposed to change. And then last 3 years came, the pandemic came. That was a huge paradigm shift for us in Pfizer, because we realized that there is an opportunity for us to really impact billions of patients around the world. It's become a reality. When our CEO at that time mentioned that we're going to have a commercially viable vaccine in November, way back in March, when he made that commitment, nobody else in the company knows or knew at that time how we're going to make that happen. It's impossible, because vaccines would have taken us from discovery to development to become commercially, to manufacture in large batch sizes and so on, takes years. And so change needs to happen. And to cut a long story short, it happened. It happened, and
That's good.
I mean, anybody with mask on, know, right? Yeah. And we're glad. And then our CEO says that, okay, we have proven that we can do things faster. All right? And so they've given the manufacturing division, of which I belong to, Pfizer Global Supply, that we need to now reduce our lead time by 50%. In other words, what we would have taken us to manufacture and ship to our patients in 3 months, you got to do it in 1.5 months. All right? Now, of course, we can't say no to our CEO. Right? Yeah, it's our breakthrough goal. And we realized that it can be done. Now, we also realized that you know, to reach that 50% reduction, perhaps the first 10 to 15, and that was a breakthrough goal that was just announced this year, and we have to meet that 50% reduction by 2025. I think that first 10 to 20-25% reduction in our lead time, manufacturing lead time, I think is possible through organic improvements. But the next 25% reduction is not going to happen by chance or through any organic efforts. We need to have a game changer. And so AI is our game changer. In fact, last week our CEO had a town hall with all of us, and he mentioned that we're going to invest heavily in AI. And that's going to be a game changer for us. So we have already started in our manufacturing, in our global supply, early successes of where we see the application of AI. And we do see productivity improvement in that sense. Like you mentioned about the large language, the LLM, right? So we cannot use ChatGPT in the public because it's too dangerous. Like what Gavin said, I think earlier on, that someone would have posted company secrets and so on. So we definitely can't do that. So everything that we work on, especially in the early stage of our drug discovery, is super confidential. And so we have developed our own internal ChatGPT within Pfizer. So it runs on the same engine, but it stays within Pfizer. And that allowed us for the first time where we can have scientists from the drug discovery phase all the way to colleagues who are involved in the manufacturing and packaging working together to spawn off ideas, discuss with one another. We're also seeing the application of LLM into, for example, at our plants, whenever there is a deviation and investigations occur, we are starting to use LLM to help us look out for potential root causes where we would have spent days investigating the problem. Now it could have just taken us hours. And then we can spend quality time discussing about solutions.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that
So,
was early success.
and I guess that's kind of answering the question, because you're saying that, humans will still interact with AI, right? It
Definitely.
isn't that we're saying that humans are not interacting with AI,
Yeah.
but the AI that you're talking about there is actually facilitating human-to-human connections as
Yes,
well.
definitely.
You're actually connecting people along that drug pipeline.
Yep.
Really, really interesting.
I'd just like to add on that I think, again, with that whole concept of the spectrum of AI, I think it's important to segregate between automation AI and enablement AI. And there's a lot of AI applications that do actually completely automate a production facility. And we have a lot of those existing today. But I think large language models are very much to your point. They're more of an enablement AI. So how do we speed up a process? How do we simplify a process? How do we help make knowledge more accessible? Those kind of things.
Yeah, if I may add on, right. So that application is very much at the end of our process where we have a finished product and we need to conduct an investigation. We have also designed of what we call factory of the future. So we are using AI technologies to look at where we can do real-time monitoring of our equipment so that we can detect anomalies in our processes earlier on. Today, we do a lot of analysis, but after the batch has been manufactured. So now we are investing into real-time monitoring to see whether we can look at patterns and anomalies so that we can prevent batch failures, which is amazing.
Really interesting. And you talked about there kind of the pressure from the CEO to make things faster, basically. I want things faster. Nobody really wants to be in a meeting with the CEO that's saying that. You know, and I guess if we take that further with a hypothetical scenario, what if once you have made it faster, the CEO says to you, well, great, now I want to lay people off. You know, I don't need as many people now to achieve this particular task. And I think that's kind of one of the fears here, which is if you do have a cost-cutting mindset, and a lot of organizations do, you know, how would you respond to that? Like, do we combat against that with particular approaches? And I guess anybody can come in here to answer that.
Okay. Actually, I've been thinking about this because it is a real question that colleagues asked. I think there is an opportunity to right-size the organization. Right-size because there is an opportunity to improve productivity in two types of phases. The first phase, right, is where we want to reduce the amount of productivity losses that we have today. Like, for example, if we hire anybody into Pfizer, right, and if we look at their job description, it would describe everything that this person should be doing correctly, right first time. But today, if I look at many of the colleagues at the manufacturing plants that my team and I support, a large number of the colleagues, a big percentage of their time are spent working on things that are not done right first time. Rework, investigations, equipment failures, and so on. No wonder, you know, Singaporean workers work the longest hours. I think there's a recent study. And I wonder why. You know, so in other words, nobody has actually hired a person in and tell them that, hey, actually, I do expect you to work overtime because you have to work on these investigations. No. So I think the application of AI can help us detect earlier failures so that whatever time or efforts or energy is spent into recovery can be a lot minimized. So I think that is the first phase where productivity losses can be much reduced. And then we apply AI to look at how we can truly improve productivity. All right. So I think there is an opportunity to right-size. I'm from the camp that it should not replace jobs, but it will certainly transform the work or the job that we do.
Yeah. Yeah, and there are probably opportunities to create jobs as well, which we can touch on later on. So I think this would be a really great time to open up to... Oh, go on.
Sorry, I just wanted to just add with regards to the savings that you get from, you know, let's say deploying new technologies, AI. I think it depends partly on the role. It makes me think of healthcare, a doctor, you know, to enhance life, to protect the quality, mobility, and maybe, you know, extend. So I think sometimes where you put the onus, where you put the value on someone's role matters. It's not purely about cutting something out or speeding it up, but it could be to promote something. So, you know, maybe there's a bonus for creating something within your organization.
Yep.
I think that's the opportunity. You know, with a human-centric organization, it's not just about detracting,
Yes.
removing, and kind of, you know, ramping something up or scaling it, but also to you know, extend, search, discover, you know, these kind of maybe softer, fuzzier things.
And are you seeing that when you're interacting with clients? Like, is there a desire for that?
I think there is, and going back to the first question again, basically the qualitative aspects of a role, attention is now a currency, so one's intent, and applying your attention on a task. This is a very simple thing, but we might see in a hospitality environment, to remember someone's name, to write a handwritten note, to make a mark, or perhaps to kind of imbue some meaning in someone's day. I think that there's maybe more opportunity there. And maybe that's service-led rather than kind of manufacturing, but yeah, I think it opens up pockets for humans to express themselves.
Brilliant. Okay, let's open up to the audience then. So if you want to put your hand up, if you've got a question, I can see somebody there has a question, so yeah, go ahead.
Okay, hi everyone, I'm Linda, adult educator at IAL. I just wanted, first of all, to thank everybody, the speakers, all very good, stimulated. I just wanted to ask the audience, everyone included, right, since we have these big resources, what if we move AI up the value chain? Because you talk about human-centric, I was sitting here trying to figure out, so who are these human we're talking about? So if we can get clarity, like human means customers, human means employees, humans means partners, because we're in ecosystem, problems are getting complex, we need to work with people who are very diverse. So question is, how can we use AI? What if can we move it upstream? What if AI can increase the willingness of customers to pay? Customers' willingness to pay. What if AI can increase the willingness of our workers to work? What if AI can increase the willingness of partners to collaborate with us? Could that be the way to handle AI at that very strategic value up before we come down the value chain? Thank you.
Really great question. Who would like to take that?
It's a very good question, and it's a very real question as well. Until someone realizes the value of what this change will bring, what AI will bring, nobody is going to, nobody is going to say that, hey, human-centric is not good. Everybody will agree that that's a great idea. But in reality, do they actually do it or believe in it? I think they will really do it or believe in it when they see the actual value. And so one of the lessons learned for us is that over the last 3 years, because of what happened over the pandemic, we digitalized a lot of the data information that we have. And so because Pfizer consists of a lot of legacy companies, we have a lot of data that's residing in different programs, data sets, and so on. And so we have a big program called a unified data warehouse, where we bring everything in so that end users like myself can analyze data and make meaningful outcomes out of it. And we realized that one of the biggest lessons learned is to make sure that we are able to change people's mindset first. That mindset needs to change so that they believe in the value. And so the whole UDH team has one person who is dedicated to manage change. Her job is just to manage change with this whole program. And so she works with ambassadors at our manufacturing sites who are UDH ambassadors and so on. And really the value of that is to help colleagues understand and believe in the value, and then they will make that change happen.
Yeah.
I think adding on to that, and also what Christine mentioned, I'd say that, at least from my standpoint, I already see that happening. So I think a lot of people talk about how large language models are a threat to consultants, but I actually see consultants are printing money, because the expectation now is that consultants will use large language models and provide much better advisory, much more accurate advisory, and much better service to their customers. And they'll almost certainly be able to charge premiums for that. And I think it also, any level of automation moves the basis point up. So as you automate more and you take away more transactional activities from a job, you're freed up to provide some other level of premium service to your customers. And so you'll probably see the price point and the ubiquity of certain services go down, but then a wider range of services and a spectrum of options open up, where you have more flexibility to charge different price points and different capitalization. But I think it's also a mindset thing, similar to what Christina was getting at. You as an organization, are you operating on the basis of scarcity? Is your industry sunsetting? Are you trying to extract every possible penny from your production before you eventually shut it down? Or are you operating on a principle of abundance, that you think that if you can open up more services, more options, more ways of servicing your customer base, that you can charge more money and you can do more? And I think that philosophy is a really important guiding principle.
Sahara, did you want to come in?
Oh, yeah, okay. Linda, thank you for the question. A few things I just want to highlight, adding on to what Wenli and Connor has said, is this. There's a lot of opportunity for us to connect different communities that currently work independently to solve the same problem. I'll give you an example. Career counseling. Yeah, who's involved in that? The career counselor, the teacher, the parents, who else? Some of them have learning difficulties, etc. You know, and the ability to connect all this together is basically possible now with AI. So I completely agree with you, Linda, that it's really necessary to set that lofty goal because it's possible. And I actually want to say, you know, that we should try this in the TAE sector because we work across a range of stakeholders. That's what we are, our educators, our curriculum designers, you know, and our range of companies. This could be one way in which we bring conversations together, bring relationships together. Just wanted to share that from my data.
Yeah, yeah, really good. So I'm going to come back to the audience to ask another question in a minute, but one of the top questions that is coming on the tablet is actually talking about learning and development inside organizations. And the question is, how should organizations reshape their learning and development initiatives to foster a culture that embraces human-centric adoption of AI? Christian, do you want to start?
That's a really, I've been taken with the image of kind of looking at a telescope from the wrong end. And this kind of top-down, you know, the company designing an L&D program to kind of, you know, send down the tubes to the employees, I think is the wrong way of looking at it. I think it's about the personalization and preference of the individuals, and somehow that being kind of understood by the greater organization and being able to tap on those needs, talents, aptitudes, people. So learning should be constant and continual. I think we talked about this earlier, you know, togetherness, knowledge. So what is it, KDC? Knowing, doing, connecting.
Yep.
And I think it's a feedback system. So I don't think, you know, you put the time aside and, okay, 30 minutes, okay, I'm learning now. I think it should be a continual thing. And if you think about apprenticeships, you know, back in the day, that's what it was. You're working and you're learning. And I think it should be that kind of organic process personally. And I think we have the technology to do that.
There's a huge opportunity to do that. I completely agree. And I think, you know, I took part in the San Francisco interviews with Phil, and a lot of the organizations that we were speaking with, when we asked them about how do they understand their people, you know, how do they understand their skills, their capabilities, actually, it's quite a rudimentary way of doing it a lot of these organizations use, which is, you know, you've just got to tell us which skills, you know, select from a list of skills, which skills you have. So kind of linking back to what Phil was saying earlier, a person isn't a bag of skills, you know, they're more than that. So I think one of the opportunities that I can personally see, particularly with the kind of textual nature of GPT, the fact that you can interact with a computer more qualitatively, is that there's a big opportunity for us to start engaging with people at scale, you know, and actually start to do bottom-up decision making in organizations. So I think that's key. So I don't know if you want to come in, and then we'll ask for another question from the audience.
I just want to add on with that I think like a lot of these topics, there's a whole spectrum, and I think corporate learning and development is also a whole spectrum. I think within the agricultural space, there's areas and domains where it is very well structured education. If you're running chemical manufacturing, you have very structured training programs and certification programs that you have to go through. And more structured top-down learning programs are a reality of the environment. I think for the typical knowledge corporate worker, I mean, what I tell my team and I tell anyone who's listening, your career coach should be ChatGPT or one of the other large language model tools like Poe, because it's the first time that you don't have to pay $200 an hour for a career coach. And you can tell them your preferences, you can walk through the whole thing, they will personalize the content, and they will give you legitimate recommendations. And I don't think it's going to end the career coaching industry. I think, if anything, it'll enhance it, because people who never had access to a career coach will now be able to, and they will reach a point where they want personalized advice or service. But I think it's oftentimes missed in that respect. And then the reality is a lot of corporates run learning and development programs without actually having serious conversations internally about what the organization wants to be in the future. And if you don't have those conversations, it doesn't matter what AI tools you use, because you can't do anything.
Okay. Okay, so hands up, whoever wants to ask a question, and the panel can answer it. Any questions in the room?
It's turned red.
What does that mean?
It's turned red. It's
oh yes, this is. Come on. Oh great.
Hi, my name is Yuan Xiang. So actually, I'm not going to ask a question. Just now, I wanted to sort of give a bit of my own thoughts on what Linda asked earlier on about moving AI upstream in processes. I had to think about it because she opened it to the audience as well, so I thought I might want to share a bit of my thoughts. I feel like it might be a little bit premature to think about moving AI upstream in organizations because from a regulatory perspective, it's still evolving a lot with different legal frameworks still being worked out. So from a regulatory standpoint, I think that needs to be sorted out before companies can realistically embrace it as a core of their decision-making processes. Also from a technical perspective, I think the AI decisions are highly dependent on data quality. So if data is poor, you get bad decisions, and that can be drastic in terms of consequences sometimes if that happens. Also, I think there might be a lack of explainability and transparency, especially for deep learning models. And sometimes it's critical when you're making critical upstream decisions to try to understand why you're making certain decisions. And I think the use of certain AI models don't necessarily provide that transparency. So that may be something to ponder on as well when trying to incorporate AI in upstream processes. And also, obviously, there's the whole idea of potential biases in the decisions. If you're making, if you're using data that is not representatively skewed in certain ways, you may lead to discriminatory sort of outcomes of decisions. So that's worth thinking about. So sort of all of these factors together, I think the long-term ROI is really uncertain when you try to incorporate AI in your upstream processes. It might be difficult to justify the investments in making this a part of your company, I think, at this current stage. There's still a number of things to be sorted out, I feel. So just my 2 cents.
Thank you for that. And I'm really pleased you asked that question because, there are a lot of risks associated with companies using AI. So it would be great if some of the panelists can speak about the actual risks that they envisage. A lot of them were mentioned by you there around explainability, around bias. I also think there are probably bigger social risks around inequality. You know, are we amplifying inequality perhaps? What about access? Does everybody have access to the AI? And so, you know, you could actually widen social gaps if that isn't the case. So I don't know if anybody wants to make a quick comment on that, and then we can do kind of a wrap-up where everybody in the panel can kind of give their take-home to the audience.
I'm glad you mentioned about the regulatory part because, in fact, yesterday on Channel News Asia, I saw on TV that in the US, President Biden is going to sign to law or policies the regulation of AI across industries. Yeah, so it is a real problem because for us, because these are third-party softwares or platforms that we use, and it is a black box to us, and we need to assure the regulatory bodies that we know what we are doing. So that's one thing about designing models in a small-scale lab and so on, but it is another thing totally when we want to scale it up to manufacturing, to commercial badges and so on, which is why we think that out of probably 10 projects that we do, probably just 8 will fall through and only 2 will be successful when we try to upscale it. So I think that regulatory, I think it is not something that we have to wait until the regulatory bodies are able to understand the impact and so on, then we take action. I think it has to be in parallel. So while we are because these are multi-year projects or programs, so while we are working on building the internal capabilities to really understand that black box and assuring the regulatory bodies what they are, we can also work with the regulatory bodies to share our lessons learned with them as well.
Makes sense. Perfect. Okay, so we are coming to the end of the panel discussion. I think it's been really interesting, particularly hearing from the audience. It's been quite a diverse discussion. So I think now we've got an opportunity for each panelist to kind of say what they would like the audience to take home today. So like what's the main message that they would like to share with the audience. And each person has just under 1 minute to do that. So, Christian, starting with you.
Wow. I'm convinced that
TikTok. Come on.
I'm convinced this is the temperature.
10 seconds, Christian.
But that's going down.
You're losing time. You better
okay.
get.
The ethics of a machine telling you whether something is right or wrong. I think that's something we have to really consider. You know, are you fine with following the lead of a machine, actually? And then the other one is, you know, I recruit people. So the decision-making is always the hardest part of the process.
Cool. Woonlet?
Whenever we gather a group of colleagues, right, to talk about the results of such analysis, there's always this elephant in the room that is really mindset related. I notice this very interesting phenomena. When the outcome of those analyses is aligned with whoever is leading that discussion, that person will say, that's a great model, all right, that's fantastic. But what value does it bring? It's only confirming what you have already known what should be done. What happens if the analysis or the outcome is directly opposite to what you think it should be? Now, how do you manage that? So I think that elephant in the room needs to be addressed, which is again back to the mindset of how do we work with AI.
Awesome. I think we've got a bit more time now. I don't know if we've just been given more time. Yes. So I think I'm going to give a response as well. I've got time to talk. Great. We'll come back to you, Christian. So yeah, I think the main thing that I see here is this technology is quite different to a lot of the technologies we've seen in the past. I think one of the statistics that is quite interesting that shows that is that, you know, ChatGPT was one of the fastest growing products of all time. And that was only overtaken by Fred's, which was, you know, for other reasons, not necessarily based on popularity. So I think there's definitely something here about how many people actually have access to this technology. You know, there was a study in the United States carried out recently where 60% of the people surveyed admitted to secretly using ChatGPT and not telling their boss. And I think that's probably the case. I'm sure there are people in this room that may admit it after a few drinks, perhaps. So, you know, I think there's something that could be quite empowering about that everybody does have access to this, and they've got a direct relationship with the technology. But I do think we also need to be aware that this is a very early stage position, and so organizations are also experimenting with this technology right now. And you know, maybe in 5 years' time, they will start thinking more about top-down you know, implementations of these technologies in ways that are not human-centric. So I think, you know, there's hope, which is that actually lots of people have access to it and can use it for their own development. But there are some risks that we need to be aware of. Connor.
Is it going to turn red again?
Who knows?
As long as it doesn't start blinking. Yeah, I think it's been a great discussion. I would, if I had to pull one thing out, I'd be to try and pull people away from the hype and pull people back to the fact that it's basically just another technology, and technology by itself has no morals, has no principles, has no guidelines by which it's applied, and it really comes down to pretty much fundamentals that have existed even before we talked about large language models. So fundamentally, there is bias in human decision making. And if you somehow think that you're running unbiased recruitment processes without using AI, you're lying to yourself. Your hiring managers are making biased decisions every second of every day. And I think my hope with these technologies is they make that reality more obvious, that because we can see in the technology obvious bias, it also challenges us to consider the fundamental bias that we're applying in everything that we do in our work. Having non-human-centric controlling management has existed before Gen AI. There are companies that micromanage their employees, that extract every second and every cent that they possibly can. Large language models in and of themselves are not going to make that worse. So I think for me it would be pull everyone back to just fundamentals of how do we want to run our businesses? How do we think of business? How do we think of work? And I think that answers more of the questions than, you know, is this technology fundamentally better for us or worse for us? Because it's actually both.
Sahara?
I would like to add to basically the conversation to basically talk about figuring it out as a community, the kind of peer-to-peer support that we need to give one another, which I think is really crucial because that's part of how we regulate AI. Yeah? But I have a second point to make, which is basically related to what I find in the data. It's we really need to look at how we need to bring the bottom up in this journey. A lot of the discussions have been really about professionals and professionals. Who is bringing that conversations up? We've seen digital innovation did not enhance jobs like transport. We saw. Everyone was so excited about it and said, what a game changer it is. Was it a game changer in terms of jobs? No. We need to create that pathways. And the pathways needs to be created deliberately. And we're going to argue that it needs to be created within the AI ethical framework because digital needs to be distributed, or rather the benefits of digital needs to be distributed more fairly. Thank you.
Brilliant. Well, thank you to all the panelists, and thank you to the audience for your questions. It's been great. Thanks. Cool.
I think there's going to be a photograph, so stay on stage. And while the photographs are going on, could you bring up the screen with the QR code? Yeah. So I would really welcome all of you to sort of put in your thoughts on the one takeaway. I think there are questions, and I'd love for you, all of you, to answer that question. Thank you. So just a thought, I don't know if any of you use Khan Academy or have used Khan Academy, but if you are a subscriber, go on and take a look at something new that's come up on Khan Academy. It's called Khan Me Go. So it's talk about responsible use of AI. And I think they have done such a wonderful job because it's like a personal tutor. You can go in there and ask for how do you solve a problem in calculus. And the tutor will not give you answers. It will take you through the process of solving and does it in a very beautiful way. So we were talking about ethics and we were talking about leaders' roles in preserving ethics and things like that. I thought the Khan Me Go example was an amazing one. Okay, so you were asked to share a word or a phrase that best describes your perspective on the relationship between AI, corporate innovation, and productivity. And it's interesting, enabler is the big word there. Possibilities is another big word there. Augmentation. And honestly, I think that this whole term human centricity is a big term. It requires a lot of unpacking in terms of what it really means. But I think the idea of a machine augmenting a human or enabling a human being, in a way, is the best analogy I can think of is what Microsoft's now calling the co-pilot, right? It doesn't, but it's, the co-pilot has in a real context of a pilot and a co-pilot, you need to be able to trust the co-pilot because he's giving you instructions on navigation, which are like mission critical. I don't think we have reached that stage where you can rely on AI to give you really co-pilot type of instructions, but that's probably where AI is moving in the future, to becoming a true enabler, to becoming an augmenter of human beings. So on that note, I hope you've had lots of food for thought. I'm going to suggest now we have some thought for food. Yeah? So lunch is ready. You can head out. It's right outside the conference room here. And we'll be back at 1:30. Thank you very much. Enjoy.